All right, very pleased to welcome in our good friend Dave Poulin from TSN Hockey. Of course, you saw on the Jets broadcast last night. I think we're going to find out some interesting things about this team and a number of players going down this stretch because, listen, no one in the organization expected it to be next year time and basically playing the entire month of April essentially out of it. But with some big questions on where this organization and this team goes from here, Dave, and what changes will happen. I still think that there is a lot to prove for some of the, excuse me about that. There's a lot to prove for a number of the players that are in this roster right now. Then they'll be playing for the final, 9 games of the season.
I was going to ask if we're on a party line here. I thought it was. I thought someone else was ringing us in Green Acres up at the top of the telephone pole. It is a. We used to say it all the time. If you want to stay together, you have to win. That's the bottom line. And, this group has had a run. We focus back, on quite a different team, certainly a totally different D core and a number of different forwards that went to the conference finals. But the core of the team is still there, and the core starts with number 55 and number 26, and it grows from there. Pierre-Luc Dubois is certainly a new piece that I think is a core piece. And Josh Morrissey is definite core piece on defense. The pieces should add up to more, Andrew. And when I was looking at the D last night for my TV hit, you looked at adding Dillon and you looked at adding Schmidt and you said, okay, the D's got to be better. And yet it hasn't. 18th in goals against isn't good enough. It was just outside of 10th, a fraction, last year. And in the years before that, you were down in the top 5, save percentage, fourth, fifth, and it's not right now. And so why is that? I don't just think it's the goaltender. I think it's the defensive play of the hockey team, not pointing just at the defenseman. And, and I'll give you a good example on that first goal last night. You're looking at, okay, who made a mistake on the goal? Well, it was pretty simple for me. Pierre-Luc Dubois had Josh Norris. That's his responsibility. And he thought the puck was popping the other way. And it was one little turn to the left. And then he realized and he tried to come back and it was too late. So, the D looked bad on the play. Pionk looks bad on the play. It was forward coverage on the defensive side of it. And so everyone's responsible. But I think you're going to see, if they're not successful making the playoffs and they know what a job they have to do that, they need a lot of magic to happen. You do have to look at changing the core of the team. You just do, because this group hasn't worked together.
Dave, coaching's been a big conversation as well. Throughout the year, obviously with Paul Maurice leaving. But I wanted to ask you, comparing the Oilers and Jets, both had great starts to the season. Mm-hmm. Both had terrible months of November where they really bottomed out, and both teams had coaching changes. Why do you think Woodcroft and the Oilers have had the turnaround that they've had, and the Jets have basically been the same team that they were when Paul Maurice left?
Not sure I'd put it on the coaches rather. I think I'd put it on the players. You've seen the elevation of individuals in Edmonton that you haven't seen the same consistent elevation in Winnipeg. And I think the problem is that for fans, you do lump together the last couple of years and you've seen such good play at times. You talk about the start of the year. Well, you just want consistency. You want that to be all the time. And why wouldn't you? And, if there's probably a trait that I was proudest of, it was my consistency. I talk about bandwidth. I didn't have this, this phenomenal high, but my low was a little bit higher and I played within that. And you can't have really crazy swings. How do you know how to monitor a team when you've got these crazy swings? And sometimes the group together looks so good and sometimes it looks disjointed. So do you point to coaching for that? It's part of it. But I still look at the players inevitably. And, and Dave Lowry didn't have a chance to interview for this job. And you would assume when the season ends, that's almost how you would handle it. If I were in a management position, say, okay, we're going to interview people for this job. You certainly have been here. You've been here as an assistant. You've been here as an interim head coach. But what is your vision for this hockey team? And because chances are, with everything happening as quick as it did, he didn't really get an opportunity to have a different vision or have a stamp on it. Even all of a sudden, he was just head coach.
Dave, we talked a little bit about what the players are going through for these final games and, what we're looking at them. Listen, I think and Darren Drager reported it, I mean, there's going to be a thorough top to bottom audit of the Winnipeg Jets. And I think everyone is feeling pressure right now. But, leaning on your experience as an executive, if you're in Kevin Cheveldayoff's office right now, how are you handling the final games of this season? And what is it that the general manager is looking at in the present, or is most of it essentially more about the minute they get to game 82 and on to the offseason?
No, it's happening right now for sure. You want to see the way players react, and albeit 10 games left, you want to see how things happen through these 10 games. And and let's start with the D, because you have a lot of options on the defensive side, and because you have players on term and you have multiple ages. You go from age in if I pick 9 defensemen, you go from 21 to 31 years old, and that would be from Heinola to Brendan Dillon, I think is the oldest at 31. You've got guys on good terms. You've got guys for multiple years. You've got assets that you could move that would be attractive to move. You've got to figure out what the best pieces are for you to put together out of that group. Does it include Dylan Samberg, who I think has made a good first impression? And I like a lot of things about what I see there, but he came in very highly touted for me because of my background in the college game and guys that knew him so well there. Heinola, same thing, comes in with a big pedigree. Where does he fit? Declan Chisholm, is he a part of the mix? Logan Stanley, you've seen at the NHL level, and I mentioned, it's funny how you mentioned something and everyone interprets it how they want to interpret it. Because when I mentioned last night that I like size on defense, a group obviously turned right to analytics and said, but the big guys haven't performed analytically. And while I like size on defense, it has to be a part of the makeup. And I don't know who it involves. Dylan's a bigger guy. Samberg's a bigger guy. Stanley's a bigger guy. Does it involve 1, 2, or all 3 of those? And it's not a perfect formula. And it's about putting the right pieces together. So I think that's what management has to do through these last 10 games, see what pieces might fit together. Like we saw at one point, we saw Samberg playing with Dylan on the wrong side last night, because you have a choice of right and left shots as well with that group. And then up front, the same thing. If you're assuming, your first assumption is everyone's coming back, what pieces fit together the best? The reacquisition of Mason Appleton, I think, is to have a partner for Adam Lowry. It looks like Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois are a fit. The staple is Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler. I mean, that's your staple in terms of a pair. Where does Ehlers fit in with that group? And are there other options available? You've got some young guys who are coming, who you think are really coming. A Cole Perfetti would be a great example. Where does he fit into this equation? And where do some of the other pieces that you like as role players fit in? So there's a lot of work that can be done in these last 10 games, Andrew, to see how things play out and what your options are.
Well, and Dave, just you mentioned Dylan Samberg. I mean, I think, as disappointing as the situation is for Jets fans that tune into the games on Friday and then again last night, you had to be excited about the way that he acquitted himself, man. I mean, certainly did not look out of place at all. And, did a lot of the good things that we saw earlier in the season, but seems to maybe be playing even with more of a confidence now that he's had a few games in the NHL under his belt.
And that's what it is. The second and third times you get called up. Now, I was very fortunate. I got called up and stayed up. But I joined the team late in the year, and I only played 2 regular season games, and then I played in the playoffs. And it helped me immensely over that following summer. It helped me train. It helped me get up and go to the gym. And every single bit of it, because I'd been there. I could live, albeit a short body of work for him, as it was for me. You've still been there. And he does look more comfortable. And I would say it's been the most unusual time over the last couple of years in development for players coming up on the precipice of the NHL, because they haven't had normal cycles. They simply haven't, for training, for playing number of games. Nothing has been normal in the last 2 years in terms of development for a young hockey player. So I think we have to be a little more patient and allow them a little more, leash or leeway, if you will. But everything I see about him, he's got a little bit of a mean streak in him. He's physical. He can move the puck. He's a good sized guy. So there's a lot of components there to like.